everyone in this room feels the urgency of this moment, and we know that the world is watching what comes out of Paris. So I will try not to repeat what we've already heard and focus on a few specific areas where I think philanthropy and the private sector needs to play a much bigger role in the set of solutions that come out of this very important meeting. But first, let me just point out that 60% of low-income countries are in or at high risk of debt distress as we sit here and talk about how to mobilize more private capital for energy and climate transitions. That is a very difficult macro environment in which to be successful at our mission. And so the basic goals of this summit, developing an architecture for the financial system that provides sustainable, lower-cost lending that spurs longer-term investment, funding global public goods for just energy transitions, pandemic prevention and response, and agricultural research to address the impending hunger crisis we just heard about, expanding the balance sheets of multilateral development banks by aggressively implementing new capital adequacy frameworks, such as those endorsed by the G20 Capital Adequacy Framework report, and updating instruments to account for climate vulnerability, including loss and damage waivers and natural disaster debt clauses, have made up the heart of what we have been calling the Bridgetown Initiative. And it's very important that this session make real progress on these concrete and critically needed reforms that will provide more, better, and more effective liquidity to countries that are in desperate need. But at the same time, we know the numbers. We know that we need $2 to $4 trillion annually of public and private investment in order to make this climate transition a just one. And we know the vast majority of that must come from the private sector. So that's where I'd propose a few resolutions. The first is simply recognizing that the current macroeconomic situation is very difficult for private capital to, in a fully risk-embracing manner, be invested aggressively for climate transition projects in emerging and developing economies. In fact, just being realistic, last year, 0.6%, less than 1% of the world's renewable energy deployment took place in Africa, a continent with 50% of the world's potential solar radiation for energy. To address these types of inequities, a group of foundations, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Bezos Earth Fund, and the IKEA Foundation, have mobilized a global energy alliance for people and planet with $1.5 billion of concessional capital, or grant capital, in order to attract private investment to renewable energy projects, and we're currently investing in 30 projects in 16 countries. Based on those learnings and experiences, there are three things we hope this summit can help advance. The first is we desperately need in the global financial system a one-stop shop for blending public and private finance at the project level. That does not exist today. It simply does not happen in any meaningful way. And it doesn't happen with those around the table that have the concessional capital required to subsidize, protect, and support the right types of private investors that can provide leverage in these projects. In our own experiences in the 60 countries that we are actively operating in, project-level subsidies range from 10% to 50%, depending on whether you're providing solar energy in Eastern Congo or helping improve access to electric buses in India. And we need that type of availability of concessional capital alongside private investment to deliver success. Second, there's been a proposal tabled by Prime Minister Mia Mottley and Avinash Prasad to create a mechanism for foreign currency risk mitigation. That mechanism will require concessional capital to take the risk premium out for the basket of countries that are lower income and emerging economies, and we hope that proposal will be advanced by the deliberations here in Paris. And third, we actually just need real, direct, subsidized investments in core technology access. 20 years ago, we would lament that African countries and lower income countries simply didn't have access to vaccines, to drugs, to deal with the AIDS crisis, to deal with vaccine preventable disease. And we came together and created instruments to make those technologies available. Today, developers doing projects that are smaller and more distributed around the world, trying to serve communities of people that have lower incomes, do not have affordable and easy access to batteries, to solar panels, to smart meters, and to the technologies that define the renewable energy frontier, energy storage being the most inaccessible to these developers. We need new instruments for pooled procurement and finance that would resolve that access gap. If we can do these things and we recognize they cost money, we will be able to make significant progress in making the energy transition and the climate transition far more inclusive at a time when the macro conditions are very, very difficult. So we at the Rockefeller Foundation and with our partners in Philanthropy will do our part, and we very much hope that world leaders gathered here this week will make commitments that will advance this agenda in a meaningful way. Thank you.